Hey everybody, Matt McQueenie, Mix Minus Podcast, Sunday, January 14th, 2018. Did I say the time yet? It's 2:10, and we're in the midst of the second day of football playoffs of this weekend. Is this the semis, I guess you'd say, the semifinals? Have the Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers up on the screen here. I'm really annoyed, actually, because I have the iPad, and you can log into the NFL mobile app, and you can pretty much watch the games. This is often what I put on for my Red Zone channel, but when you get to the playoffs, there is no need for Red Zone channels because there's just one game at a time. And so I went to put it on, and the thing is driving me nuts. No matter what I do, I keep just getting this screen that is playing the post-game show from last night after the New England Patriots decimated the Tennessee Titans. And it just keeps playing over and over again. No matter how many times I multitask it out, reopen it, log out, log back in. And of course, I'm using my parents' login from their home in Mahwah. I get so many great channels for free, premium channels for free. It's how I get the NFL Red Zone channel. It's how I get HBO Go. It's how I get Showtime. It's how I get almost any channel that I need, even channels that I have in my home. But I have a really small-time cable provider. I think I've said in the past, they are, I believe, the first cable provider in the United States. And from that point forward, they never expanded. And so all these other big boys took over. And when you're a really big cable network, cable provider, you're going to have a lot of goodies. And so I don't get that. It's getting a lot better, actually, because I guess there's more of a universal platform for a lot of these TV everywhere software solutions. But you can't beat Optimum. You can't beat Time Warner. And I shop around because the place I lived at in Edgewater, I still have that login from Time Warner. And then I'll increasingly use my parents' Optimum. And I don't think of it as cheating because they don't even use it. So it's just me using it. It's like sort of how they subscribe to the New York Times. And in the past, I would just use the digital addendum subscription from that because they weren't using it anyway. Now I have my own because I got a student rate. And I really want to back media in this day and age when they're doing so much good work, unrooting things and figuring things out and delving deep. They need the commitment, the financial commitment, and they need people subscribing because there's no other way they can get the work done without that. So I really resolved to subscribe to as many things as I can. I still do use student rates, or I still do try to get really good deals. I actually just came up on a year of my New York Times subscription, and I saw that it was $15 a month now. I was paying $7.50 a month with the student rate, and then once that rate ran out after the year, it kind of defaulted up to the regular digital subscription of $15, which, let's be honest, is still pretty affordable, and you're still getting a ton for it. You're getting great apps when you're thinking of iOS, iPad, iPhone. Their iPhone app is really nice, and it has updated to the new dimensions of the iPhone 10, which I was really appreciative of. So they do a great job with it. But when you go from $7.50 to $15, it just doesn't feel good. And so I went right through the app itself or through online to go and try to cancel the subscription because I figured, hey, if I got to pay $15 a month, at this point, this is a little too rich for my blood, even though, again, it's worth it. But I told myself I'll just get my parents' login and I'll have the New York Times that way. So I went into the app to get the number or online to get the number to cancel, and I saw now they have a chat box because this annoyed me. You couldn't cancel before without calling. And I know that's a nice way to keep subscriptions active, to make people call in this day and age when no one ever wants to get on a phone. But I figured I was going to call at this point. But I get in there, and then there's a chat function. And so I'm sitting there chatting from my iPhone with somebody, And I pretty much told them this is too expensive. And then out of nowhere, they're like, well, how about if I can offer it to you for $6 a month for the year? And I said, all right, I'm in. So I'm actually paying less than I was last year on the student rate for some reason, because these places want to keep subscribers in play. You can't lose the subscriber numbers, even if it means taking the cost down on the subscription. And you have to do this with all of your services, from cable to Sirius Radio to whatever you have out there where you have a subscription and there are people on the other end, a customer service workforce. You call and you threaten to cancel and you will get deals. And I'm sure only 20 to 25% of people, if that, will actually make the call. And so they figure, being the place who's offering the subscription, the newspaper, the cable provider, they figure that if you call, they'll offer you the deal, and they'll have the rest of the 75 to 80% of people just continuing to pay what they pay without really raising a fuss. And so they'll give you the deal. You always get the deal. And that makes me feel better about using services. I love deals. I love with the Washington Post that when you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can get the Post because Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon and is the primary owner of Amazon, that he bought the Washington Post. And so this guy's a customer-centered individual. He is all about the customer. I mean, we keep waiting until they flip and they've bought everything up, and then they start raising the prices because they're the only ones offering any services. But I don't know if that's even in his blood. I really think he's a customer service-centric person. I think he will always drive down prices. He will always do his best to make sure the customer is getting the best deal they can. I remember reading in the book about Amazon, The Everything Store, I believe it was called, great book to read, that in all meetings, who knows if they still do this, but in all meetings they keep an empty seat there at the boardroom table, and that empty seat represents the customer. So they're always doing that. And because of that, because he buys the Washington Post, and he did that really as a service, I think, as a public service. I don't know that he's looking to drive profits from the Washington Post. And he bought it for, I think, $250 million or something like that. But he sees it as something that's necessary in the day and age. And who would have ever thought it would be so necessary now? Who would have ever thought? I don't think he ever had the foresight to think a Donald Trump would become president. And more than ever, places like the Washington Post and the New York Times would have to hold to account the administrations, the president himself, to constrain the lesser angels of our nature or whatever. And he has many of them. But as a service, Jeff Bezos, he upped the digital platforms. They're beautiful apps. He brought in more reporters, and they're driving digital subscriptions like crazy. And I think part of it is what they offer to Amazon Prime subscribers, that you can get the Washington Post on a monthly basis for $3.99 a month. That is a tremendous deal. And you get it for the first 6 months free if it's your first time signing up. So really good thing. But anyway, in that whole roundabout way, I get back to the fact that I go onto this NFL app and this thing keeps running around and running around. So now I have my little iPhone, which for whatever reason was able to get the game live. And oh my God, this game is about to go 28-7 Jaguars. Oh my goodness, unless they turn it back, but I don't think they will. The Jaguars just have the Steelers' number. They just punch them in the mouth and they know what to do. They have a tremendous defense on paper, and when you're in this game, they're really putting it out there. Wow. It's going to be tough. Although I see a flag here. But they're, early on, we're almost at the half. They're doing really well here, but I have it on my phone, and it's kind of annoying because I want it on the iPad, and I'm sitting here on my little dinky phone, sitting against the iPad to try to watch this. But I need to get a podcast out here. It's hard. It's hard to find the time, hard to find the moments. And a lot of times it's like writing. It's like anything. You just got to turn it on. You just got to start typing. You just got to start talking, and you go. And that's what we're trying to do here. That's what I'm trying to go with. So this episode is going to be called Ring in the New Year, because there's always that term, we ring in the new year. It's a nice term, but for me and my wife, I talked in the last episode about how our New Year's Eve anniversary plans really got upended because of the flu running rampant through our house and running rampant through our entire families. It seems like everybody on my family side, closest to, my nuclear family, brothers, sisters who were with us, my parents who were with us on our trip after Christmas, and then into my wife's mom, and everyone just got this. It was really tough. It ran through everybody. So we didn't go on our normal anniversary. We're going to be doing that next week. I'm actually really interested to do that because it's nice to have that little surprise January 20th. It was always cool doing it on New Year's Eve, but once it's done, it's done. You're into the year, and then before you know it, really the next time you go out for something special is mid-February when you get to Valentine's Day. So it's nice to actually have something to look forward to right now in January. So I'm going to keep many of the plans we had, pretty much all the plans. It's just the times change a little bit, but the prices have come down in about in half because it's not New Year's Eve anymore. And so we actually get a better deal on that. But we ring in the new year because a couple of days into the new year, we finally had gotten through our sicknesses. Everything seemed stable. Everything seemed fine. It was a Friday night, I think the first Friday of the year. And I was driving home and it was maybe 2 degrees. It was like way too cold. And I stopped and got our Chipotle, our little Friday night routine where we get our Mexican food. Our normal in-town Mexican place, our authentic Mexican place, was closed for renovations and new menus and things like that. And sometimes I still like to change things up and go to Chipotle. So I stopped at Chipotle. You save a bit more money too on it. But I went in there, got the food, almost died going to and from my car in the cold. It was so cold and the wind chill was so brutal. I mean, I often think when I'm out there in that wind chill, how do football players play in like Green Bay in that kind of weather? I don't know how people get through it. I give so much credit to the Giants for winning those 2 games on their way to the 2 most recent Super Bowls in Green Bay, especially the ridiculous cold game with the red cheeks of Tom Coughlin, who is actually, isn't he president of operations for the Jacksonville Jaguars? So it's funny to see his team making a run now. But it was so cold. But anyway, got the Chipotle, headed home. I think picked up a couple bottles of wine, the local liquor store. Oh, I love Friday nights. I love the open aspects of Friday night. Coming home, not a worry in the world. You'll put your kid to bed, your toddler, and then you're just gonna crack open a bottle of wine, and the opportunities are endless. You're gonna eat your Mexican food. I'm gonna have basketball on in the background. We're gonna talk. We're gonna cavort, we're going to drink, and we're just going to have a nice time, carouse with one another, and it was going to be nice. So I was really looking forward to that with no one sick anymore. It was going to be perfect. Nice kickoff into the new year. So we get home, I put my son to bed. He has a crazy routine. These kids are nuts, what goes through their heads, but like he's so enthusiastic about life that you roll with it. This kid, we have to read him books at night, which is a normal activity for parents of a toddler. He's 3 years old in a handful of months. November's his birthday. And we sit down, we get him into his pajamas, and then we sit on the floor. He tells you, sit on the floor. It's, he's very, he directs us on everything we need to do. And we have a pile of books, which is, like a foot and a half tall, just pile after pile of book. And you pick up books to read, and then he yells at you not to read them. And then there's really only like 2 or 3 books out of the 15 that are in the pile that you're allowed to read, but you have to keep the pile perfect. If the books fall, he loses his mind. He gets really flustered, and then he's got to put them back together like Humpty Dumpty. And then when you're done with that, you kind of have to maneuver him to be ready to go to bed because he'll just keep stalling. He'll keep saying, I have to go back in and give mom a kiss. I have to do this or that. But when you're ready after book reading, I have to pick up all 15 books and carry them from his room to our room because that's sort of where we center our final routine activities before he heads to his crib. We go in there. He gives my wife a hug. We go through this whole thing where he says goodnight to all of the personal assistants that are around. There's one Echo in the bathroom. There's a Google Home in the bedroom. And then there's another Echo on our way to his room. We have a 2-story kind of great room. And so from there, you can talk down to the echo that is in that first floor of that great room. So we got to talk to all those. It's what we do. I have to carry the books. My wife puts, I think, chapstick on them and all this different stuff. It's funny, these routines. They last for like an hour when you get these kids, but it is what it is. It's just how you get it done. So take him in, put him to bed. He has to close the blinds. He has to turn off the light. You have to say, I love you, and have sleep well about 15 times, including after I put him down, and then walk out of the room. He'll yell it, and you just have to keep saying, I love you, sleep well, see you tomorrow. And then he will say it again. You have to say it again. And then at some point you just say, all right, this is the last time. I love you, sleep well. And then he kind of just does this whole rocking routine where he just beats himself into the sides of the crib. We are assured by the doctors that it's okay and he won't hurt himself because he won't go hard enough within his own personal thresholds to hurt himself. So we do that, get him down. Once you get him down, you love being with your kids, but you love when they're down too, because it means, again, that bottle of wine, that Mexican food is upon you. There's nothing that's going to get you the rest of that night. It's just going to be beautiful. You're going to wake up on a Saturday, everything's open. Nothing better than a Friday night. So I then head back into our room, and often my wife will have her own routines at that point, and I'll just lay on the bed and catch 5 or 10 minutes of something I was reading, watch some highlights, maybe watch some games that are in motion, that are happening when you get past that 8 o'clock hour. Might be a game or two in the second quarter in the NBA. I just look around, putz around, Facebook, nuzzle, just look for some new stuff. And someone called my wife that night, one of her friends, I guess, to ask something about something at the school, another teacher actually. And she's standing there against the dresser, and all of a sudden she just lifts her hand up and goes, "Oh my God, my ring." And I said, "Oh my God." And I saw, and weirdly enough, so she has her engagement ring, and then there's a wedding band, right? So you get the engagement ring when you propose marriage. And that's like the real big one. That's a nice one. I mean, at least the way I was kind of taught that this is supposed to work. And again, going through all this stuff, I was shocked at the prices of rings. I will always say that. And I just can't fight my way through that. It always just feels like a colossal waste of money, but it's important to them. And it's important to have that and the meaning of it and all that. So you just kind of do your best to go with it. And everyone always says the rule of thumb is it's 3 months 3 months of paychecks. So however much you make in your job, take 3 months of that and then figure that that's about how much you should spend on your engagement ring. Who knows if we're all just being suckered by the industry, but that's what they say, because isn't that convenient that a quarter of your year should go to a ring? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, no matter how you cut it, no matter how much you make when you get to that point in life, mid-20s, late 20s. It's a lot of money. And geez, imagine second marriages, and then people really move up in the corporate world or in whatever their line of work is, and they move up to those managerial positions, and they're really raking in money, and then you really got to pay out more. But it's a lot of money. And then you get the wedding band, which can be less, and that's pretty much, that wedding band is the one that you put on the woman's hand on the day of your marriage, or when you're officially married, and she gives you yours, and yours is not a lot of money usually. And that wedding band is not as much, it's a fraction of the cost. The engagement ring is the biggie. That's the one that has the nice band. It has the big diamond in the middle, or diamonds, or whatever it's almost like flowers, how they have all that stuff going on. There's just a million things going on in these diamonds, and you're sitting there going, I just don't get it. But it's important to women, and they all fawn over these things and say, oh my God, these rings are beautiful. It's like, the more people say to me, this ring is beautiful, I go, oh, it reminds me how expensive it is. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But we do these things because we love people, and because they're important to the routines of growing together and being married. And you figure, I won't have to do this again. Even though my wife is telling me, hey, at 10 years, I thought maybe we would get another one. And I was like, what? And then she was telling me, well, you could turn it in. And I was like, all right, whatever. So anyway, she lifts her ring that night, and it wasn't there. All that was left was the band. The entire centerpiece was gone. and you're just sitting there and a hole opens up in your stomach. Not because of the emotion of thinking of the attachment she has to it, but literally the money that's gone from that. It's like, oh my God. And it's just gone. And it's not like misplacing your keys or a phone. It's big, but it's also small. It's very small. And there's nothing on it that is a definitive marker that it belongs to someone. And if somebody finds that, it's like finding a ridiculous amount of money. And there's no way to even return it. And there's no way to find it. So you just have to hope that it's somewhere nearby. And you have to hope that over the day that my wife would have seen it missing, right? That some point in the day she would have seen it, just as that night she was looking and it was missing and she saw it. I mean, all the times, because that's that ring finger is on, her watch hand with her Apple Watch. So you look at that for the time all the time, and then you think you should be able to see it, the ring there, or be missing at that point. So you just think it's missing, or you would think you would be able to see that it's missing at that point. So at that point, our beautiful first Friday night of the year, where we're going to have our wine and do all that stuff, is completely upended. It's 8:15 at this point, and now we're just going through everything, hoping we can find this needle in the haystack. Hoping, because it's -2 degrees wind chill, or 5 degrees without wind chill, that it's not like we're out at a park during the day and you ding it on a playground swing set or something, and then it's just you're to find it would be impossible. So the fact that you're inside mostly, the fact that she went from school to her mother's to home, the fact that whenever she's outside of or in the outside world she's wearing gloves because of how cold it is, you're thinking it has to be contained, it has to be somewhere that makes sense. And so we're just going through everywhere we can think of. We're going through her sock drawers because that's where she was just standing. We're going through the bed. We're going through her gloves. We're going through her bags. We're going through everything we can possibly think of. But it's like not coming up. It's just not being found. We're going through the couch cushions. We're going everywhere she was, and she wasn't that many places. And we're just losing our minds. It's literally just the fact of losing something that is so dear and expensive, and you just have no way to get it back. There's just nothing you can do. And when I thought about these rings, I never thought of the idea that it could just fall off. Never thought of that in a million years. I thought, okay, maybe it gets stolen. My parents' rings were actually stolen from their townhouse in Washington, D.C. I think maybe when I was just born or something like that, or very early on in my life, first couple of years. Theirs were stolen, and I don't think they ever replaced them. They're not really ring people. And so I'm just sitting there going, oh my God. And here's the big issue. When I got the rings, you're given all this paperwork, GIA certified, appraisals, here's how much it's worth. And then there's a document with a stick-it on it that says send to homeowners insurance. And the fact I have this document still with the envelope and with the paperwork inside is meaning to me I didn't send it to homeowners. And what you need to do with a valuable item like this is you get your normal homeowners insurance, which covers your home, covers the structure, covers all that. We actually had homeowners cover a leak in our master bathroom, which because of the leak, because of the only way to fix it was to uproot the entire tub and the entire shower and then have it rebuilt. Because that was the only way to get to the leak, for whatever reason, homeowners insurance covers it. And we're talking like $13,000. So that was really good. I couldn't imagine having to put that out. But that's covered because of the basics of how homeowners insurance works. Now, when you have a really valuable item, and I've been thinking about this more, should I put my podcast equipment into what's called a rider? A rider is an addendum to your homeowner's insurance that covers specific items. One of those items has to be jewelry, because what in your house is worth thousands of dollars just in a small package? What really is worth that much? I mean, we have TVs that are in the hundreds of dollars at this point. The price of those comes down. We do have treadmills, but I dare someone to try to steal that. It's so big. Something so small that's so expensive. There's just not that many things in your home like that. Maybe there's artwork, maybe there's this or that. We don't have that though. And so you need to get what's called a rider for these. And that's why they give you that paperwork that you need to send to homeowners. And so we've had this ring now for 9 years because my wife, or actually we just celebrated our 7th anniversary. So I got the ring a year before that. So maybe about 8 years we've had the ring. 8 years. We went from living in Edgewater in a co-op to living in our home here in Sparta for the last coming up on 7 years, because we moved in here shortly after we got married, a couple months after. And so I'm thinking maybe I did send this in somehow, even though I still have the document. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I sent it in to my first homeowners, and then it just keeps rolling over because you just keep following the same, you keep kind of following the same template of what you had covered from place to place. And I'm just like, oh, maybe I have it. I hope I have it. Because shockingly, if you have a rider for something like a ring, they will give you, I believe, pretty much the full cost of the ring back. Which then at that point you can take that and go get the new ring without having to put new money out. This is big money. I mean, this is like not the kind of money you just have hanging around. This is money you got to liquidate. This is money you got to find. You're not finding it in the couch cushions as hard as I was looking for that ring in the couch cushions. You either got to find this ring or you got to find a way to make up all that money because you didn't send this rider in for this ring. And I feel like an idiot. So my wife feels really bad because this ring's gone. There's nothing she could do, though. What did she do to make this ring fall off? I mean, it's too expensive. That centerpiece is too expensive to just fall out. So I'm losing my mind over this. I want somebody to be liable for this. But how could they be liable? I'm even shocked that homeowners insurance covers a ring. It's so expensive that why would they cover it when you could lose it when you're out of the home? I understand if it's if something with the home goes down, like my shower, I understand that they got to cover that because it's the structure of the home. But how something that you're walking around, which could be like a $5,000 to $10,000 item that you're walking around out in the world with, how can that be covered by homeowners? I mean, look, these things happen. They're out in the world. I guess that they don't get lost so much, so it makes sense actuarially to cover it. But I didn't understand that point. But of course, I'm getting into the debate on this in my head when I didn't get it covered. I didn't get that rider. And it became painfully obvious by the time we called insurance that next Monday. It became painfully obvious we didn't have it. But shockingly, they were going to cover about half of the cost of it, which blew my mind that they would even cover that much. But we're looking around like crazy. Our Friday night's upended. The next day we get up, we're looking around more, looking here, looking there, everywhere. We go to my wife's mom's house, which was one of the places she was at. We're looking there. We're going through things. We're going behind things. I'm going out to the mailbox at her mom's house. And of course there's snow everywhere. So who knows if something like this kind of item falls through the snow. And so I'm looking in little holes where it was a disaster. Then we go to her school because this happened on a Friday. So it was the last day of the week of school. We go to the school. We're looking all around the places she was, her classroom, the stage in the auditorium, the library, or the main offices, all this stuff. A co-teacher in her music department does Saturday detention, so we see him. We have all the kids in Saturday detention looking around for the ring everywhere. This one was real crazy. The custodian has a closed circuit video feed in his office. And it's got the whole school. It's got multiple screens with the whole school covered where you can pretty much see everything. We're going back through the videotape to see all the times my wife was caught on the video, not to see if the ring falls off, but we wanted to actually see if we could pinpoint a time where she had the centerpiece in her ring. And we got real close. It was like CSI stuff where we're making the video bigger, but then it gets pixelated, and we couldn't figure out if the ring was actually on there because of the 2 bands she has already. It's pretty sparkly. There was no way to get close enough without it being pixelated to see that the ring was still there. And it was heart-wrenching. I'm taking pictures of the video, trying to blow that up on my phone. We just could not find it. We're going out by the garbage. We're going through our cars. It was awful. And this thing's gone. And all I'm coming to terms with is, you idiot, you could have got the rider. And what would the rider have meant? $100 more a year on your home insurance, which is already getting baked in with your mortgage payments. So it's not even like that much. The idiot I am. And then, of course, I'm trying to figure in my mind a way to, I'm trying to figure in my mind a way to justify what happened. I'm saying, well, if it was 8 years of that premium, of that extra money for that rider, does it end up adding up to the amount that's missing? Who cares? Because you still have to find this money in real time, whether you are realizing it, whether you're realizing it over the years or not. So it's brutal. So it's missing, it's gone. And she's, of course, rightfully wanting to get out there and get back in with the jeweler and try to get this replaced. And I'm saying to myself, look, whatever the insurance even gave us, and it's my fault. It's my fault that we don't have the rider. But even with what the insurance is giving us, I still have to find a way to make up that other half. And it's, I hate parting with a lot of money. I hate it. I just hate it. Who doesn't? But it's like, I just don't have that sitting around. Not many people do. And it's driving me nuts. So completely gone. And you just think you could you just keep thinking of something else. I'm looking through the drains in the guest room bathroom in our house. I'm like opening up the drains because as we were there one night, a couple days after it happened, that second bathroom is where we get my son ready in the morning and where we do his nighttime stuff. So my wife had a little necklace, and that necklace went down the drain while we were standing there. And then it was almost totally lost. It went down so stealthily that I almost thought that it didn't go down. And I was convinced, even though she told me it went down there, that it didn't go down. When I opened up the drain from the bottom, there it was. And I thought, oh, maybe the ring fell in one of these. So I opened them both up to see, and it was gone. I mean, it's gone. It drives me nuts. I want to find it so bad. The sting has lessened, as the sting always does as time goes on with any kind of loss. We're just sick of losing. We're sick of losing stuff, but it's not a losing mentality. It's you always got to have the bright side in things. You always got to see that around the bend, the positive thing is happening, and never martyr yourself to think that the world is out to get you. Never make yourself a victim of normal life circumstances. Be better than it. Make your circumstances. And so we will. We'll get through this. We'll find a way to replace it. Even though I have to come up with that money, by the time we get the ring, it'll be gone. And then a half a year goes by and you forgot you parted with that, and maybe you've made the money up. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But you always got to do that. So I'm reading a lot here. I'm reading the book Fire and Fury, the Michael Wolff book that's taken Washington by storm, about it's the inside story with the inside scoops of the Trump administration from the campaign into the first year of his presidency. Steve Bannon has been cashiered from all his life because of quotes that were in this book. He no longer runs Breitbart. He obviously was knocked out of the White House back in August already, and he was going to go to Breitbart and take the world over. And then these quotes finally came out in this book, and he tried to grovel his way back, but he's gone. We will hopefully not hear from him anymore. But he did do a service in a way by speaking openly and by giving the opening for Michael Wolff, who is sort of a wolf in sheep's clothing, if you will. He gave him the opening to be a fly on the wall in the Trump White House. The Trump White House was, I think, convinced that Michael Wolff was going to write a positive story on them. I had not been following a lot of what Michael Wolff had been saying over the last couple of years. I didn't even know a lot about him from before. You come to find out he did basically the same thing to Rupert Murdoch, where Rupert Murdoch 10 years ago maybe thought that this guy was going to write a positive book on him, gave full carte blanche access to family, to staff, to people who work with him, people who know him well. And then Michael Wolff came out and pretty much told the story that was told to him, and it was not a flattering story. Looks like that happened here with Trump. Now, Trump's people should have learned the lesson of Murdoch, especially because Trump apparently talks to Murdoch so much. It's kind of weird that this happened. Or maybe it's this whole little weird thing where people in media don't really, they're kind of a wink and a nod towards, oh my God, this guy did such a hit job on me, but then they're working with him, you know? It's all like kind of fake WWE kind of stuff. But this book, I can't put this book down. This was one of the first books that I impulse bought in a real long time. I subscribe to BookBub, which is the website that tells you digital deals every day on different books that are out there. And I'll make impulse buys because the book is like a normal book, which is $13 on Kindle, is now $2 that day. And I will make those kind of impulse buys when books pop up that I've always wanted to get, but that I haven't purchased yet. that were kind of on my mental list of books I wanted. I'll do that. This was the first book I impulse bought in a long time because of how much I wanted to read it. And I got it right away on the Kindle. I saw all the people talking about how the bookstores were sold out of this book and they didn't know what to do. They were going this Barnes & Noble to that store. It's been just a hit. It's been off the rocker how well this book has done in the public consciousness and public imagination. Plus the fact that Trump really pilloried it. He said it was a fake book, all this. And when Trump says things, the opposite tends to happen. Trump has made the media, it's boom times for the media because of him. He gives the ability to react in such a way that the media is constantly following his beck and call. They're constantly writing about all the things he says. He's giving so much, he's given so much sustenance to the media to go with. But this book is just fantastic. And I'll tell you, a lot of people are trying to say the Trump administration among them, trying to say, oh, it's a fake book. There's lies. There's all this. Sure, from what you read out there are some obvious errors that need to be fixed and will probably be fixed in future versions. But this book had to get out. I mean, when you're reading this thing, I'm going to be honest, it's not unflattering to Trump. I mean, the book is, it's not. It's pretty much backing up what a lot of us are thinking anyway is happening, but it's going deeper and it's a full book of this stuff. It's not the Maggie Haberman piece every other week or the Washington Post TikTok or the Politico. It's constant, this book. I can't put it down. I keep reading it. I'm so in awe of like what's going on behind the scenes here. It's an amazing window. It's an amazing window into this Trump administration. I can't stop reading it. But I'm trying to really get back into books. I have so many books. I have about 40 books in my Kindle queue. And I've really been debating back and forth internally whether I should just start unsubscribing to a lot of the media, current events, magazines, newspaper outlets that I do so that I don't have something that I feel like I have to get through. Because by the end of the day, after I've gotten through my current events media, I got no time for books. Maybe I have some minutes on the margin of the day at the end of the night, but you really only get 5-10 minutes in before your eyes are getting heavy and you're going to sleep. So I've been really going back and forth with how I can get more book reading done. Books are important. A lot of time was spent on these books you want to read, and they give you a perspective that is a little more long game than what you can get in articles or magazines. Now, these magazines and newspapers are doing a great job integrating long-form bookish aspects. But even a 10,000 word article is not a 400-page book. There's just something important in there. And I just can't get over this Fire and Fury book. It's so good. I just couldn't recommend it enough. You will, no matter what side you fall on, it is a fascinating read. But the other issue is, I've talked about this in the past, I read while I do my cardio. I read when I run. I make the text big on my iPad and I read. But I've been thinking lately, as I really try to get to the root of what my back pain is, I've been thinking lately, you know what? I don't want to believe this, but maybe I have to stop reading while I'm on the treadmill. I always run 3 miles, which is 30 minutes. Sometimes I run 4, sometimes I run 5, but always 3. So that's 30 minutes where if your form is bad even a little bit, it's going to be compounded with all the pounding you're doing on the treadmill. And so if by looking down, and you automatically will look down when you're reading, these treadmills should almost get like the where you can put the thing you're reading. They should get a thing where you can raise it so that you're raising it up to eye level, so you're not bending over or looking down at all. But it's occurred to me that I think when I'm running, that when I look down, it's doing something. It's doing a weird stretch to my muscles and it might be the reason why I can't get anything out, why I can't get these apparent strains out for years. And it's been for years that I've been reading this way. And so now I am, I'm kind of experimenting with not reading, with keeping my head up, with keeping my form perfect, with staying straight. And we'll see how we get on the other end of that. But the problem is that running, if you do it 4 times a week, that is 2 hours to 2.5 hours of reading time that I no longer have. So I'm trying to figure out where I make that up. And now if I want to read more books, it's just hard. And the other thing it's almost a crutch. It's a spur when I was running and I was reading. The reading allowed the running to go on forever, and the running allowed the reading to go on forever. It was a perfect symbiotic relationship. And now that I pulled the plug on that, it's hard. I don't know what to do. I sit there. The other day, I tried to listen to The Economist on my AirPods, and I'm running while I'm listening to that, and that was fine. But you're kind of looking around, searching for something. You want something to look at. It was just very difficult to do. Now I'm trying to kind of experiment with watching something, maybe putting it on the TV that's in the basement. But then I'm thinking, what do I want to watch? Do I try to watch the movies for the Oscars podcast I do? Do I try to try to watch TV shows I need to get through? It doesn't feel as on point and targeted as reading does. Reading, it feels like a perfect thing to read and run, but it's not the best thing for you, I don't think. And so I really want to give a go of a couple of weeks to see if this can work things out for my back. The other thing I've been doing is I get these, they always say to use lacrosse balls when you have muscle strains and different things. And you take a lacrosse ball and you go on the floor and you kind of jam the lacrosse ball into pain points. And you just roll on that lacrosse ball, and the pain is intense. And it's funny how it's lacrosse balls. Tennis balls are okay, but there's too much give in tennis balls. Baseballs are too hard. Lacrosse ball has the perfect amount of tenseness while having a little bit of give. And so they say to do that. And then there's this kind of neat little contraption. It's called like a peanut, and it's pretty much two merged lacrosse balls next to each other. So like you could you lay on that, and then it goes on either side of your spine, and you can kind of roll up on it. So the two lacrosse balls merged like that really works out for you. It'd be good in the car too, because it's not like you got all these lacrosse balls and you're trying to like maneuver them the right way. You can just have this fused lacrosse ball on your back. And I do a lot of that because I do a lot of driving during the day to work, commuting. I'll put the lacrosse ball back there and I'll just kind of roll it around my back while I'm driving. It's really nice. It's almost like Rolfing without having to pay so much money. But yeah, I'm having trouble with this. Sometimes when you make a big sea change, it's like it's almost too much to take sometimes for your normal routine, and you're just trying to grasp around for how am I going to fill the hole that's being created now? How am I going to get my reading done? How am I going to get through my New Yorker if I'm not reading it while I'm running? When that was 2 hours a week where I was able to clear that. This book, I was getting a lot of that done last week. The Friar and Fury, I was doing that when I was on the treadmill. And so I'm just kind of going back and forth between things. I don't know. What do you do? I'd love to hear from people what they do when they're on the treadmill. It's funny how we're just trying to find ways to distract ourselves so we can work out. I mean, when you're on an elliptical, you could probably read a little better, but I do just think there's something to that slight hunch that's created when you look down that just propagates down the muscle system, and just causes just a little bit of a muscle tweak being off. Who knows the way that cascades down the system? And I think it must, because maybe it's psychosomatic, but the first day where I ran, where I wasn't reading, I felt much more open and loose in the days after. Now, who knows if that's, you do planks. Planks are really good. Who knows if it's using this peanut thing and the lacrosse balls. You just don't know. And you're kind of a living organism in real time. So you take feedback and you put it back into the circle and the cycle, and you don't know where you come out with it. But I'm trying. So one of the things I tried to do here, David Letterman just came out with a new interview show on Netflix. I think it's going to come out once a week. There's, I believe, 6 to start. They have, I'm really looking forward. They have Howard Stern. They're about an hour long on Netflix. It's got Howard Stern. It's got Tina Fey, George Clooney, Malala Yousafzai, I think is her name. That women's rights, Middle Eastern or Pakistani woman, I believe. I think she was shot and she survived it. And she's this advocate. And the first one, which I watched while I was on the treadmill, and I've watched over the last day or so, was Barack Obama. Man, was it nice to see Barack Obama again being interviewed. The guy just has such grace. He's so intelligent. He's got a lot of emotional quotient. I mean, it was amazing. His humor is great. And the back and forth, the repartee with David Letterman was just so good to go through. It was so nice to hear him speak again. And I don't want to make it political, but the Trump stuff just seems to be going in the wrong direction. And I mean, that's obvious. But I mean, even from the bad direction it was in, it just seems to be getting worse. He seems to be chafing against this job, hating it. And his hate for the job spews itself out like opening a spigot and a fire hose going off. It seems to come out in his tweets, in his statements where he comes off script. I don't think he likes this. And he just says such terrible things that you're wondering, how much more can we all take with this? I mean, I've seen even conservative friends being like, we just got to end this. Because you know what? It literally, the administration, presidential politics, it needs to be just in the background. You understand during a campaign that you're going to see it every day because we're voting on these two people, or we're voting, in the primary on the 10 or 15 people that might be in play. Or I think there was 3 to 5 on the Democratic side. You want that every day because you're making a decision for the next 4 years. But once someone's elected, you really only want to hear from them once a month, maybe a couple of times a month, when there's something real being promulgated, when there's something real coming out that's going to affect your day. But otherwise, you just sort of want them to go into the background, to be relegated out of sight, out of mind, and just trusting you made the decision. So you're trusting them to do the right thing. When big votes come to the floor, we're aware of it. You want to be aware of it. You want to be aware of the pertinent debates and discussions that are happening around those things. But I don't want to hear from this every day. It's too much in my face. When I open up, the other day I opened up my Nuzzle, and Nuzzle is that curated app that takes, well, it's not I guess it's curated. It takes your social feed, primarily Twitter, and it shows you the stories you should read based on how all the people you follow are interacting with the stories out there. It's a really good indicator of the things you should be reading from the Times, the Post, Politico, the hot stories that are hitting in the moment or over the last 24 hours. You can kind of change the parameters if you want, but I go with the 24-hour one. It's a tremendous one. The other day I opened it, and every picture was a different angle of Donald Trump. And I said, oh my God, he's infiltrated everything. This is what he wants. He loves being in the public eye constantly. He loves people talking about him. He hates when they're talking about him in a negative way. And there's a lot of that, which only makes the cycle go worse. And he talks more and goes more. I can't take it. I want to open a feed and not see the president in my feed all the time. As much as Barack Obama was a media sensation and was out there, it was measured how much out there he was. He wasn't in your face all the time. He was living his life. It's one thing Monday to Friday to have it out there. But in the past, they used to say in the old newspaper industry that the things you wanted to bury and hide, you put in the news on Friday because people would go into their weekends and they wouldn't be paying attention to the news as much. Donald Trump is the opposite. The week's intense with all the news. Everyone's on tenterhooks. Everybody's anxious. But then the weekend's worse because now he's off with the rest of us, but he's watching his shows. He's watching his DVR'd cable news, and he is just tweeting off the hook. And we never get a respite. We need a respite. And Barack Obama, for whatever his ills are, or whatever you want to say he did negatively, he gave us all a respite. He gave us a feeling of stability. I saw somebody say, if Donald Trump were the CEO of a Fortune 500 company with a board and a stock listing, he would have been gone long ago. And you know what I said to that? He wouldn't have even been hired. Nobody in their right mind would hire this guy to be in charge of anything. It's why he oversaw a family conglomerate, if you want to call that, or a small family business that did big things with debt and money and real estate and name recognition, did a lot in that respect. I give him credit for that. And he became the president. You got to give him the ultimate credit. But he was not up to this job. He had no ability at 70 years old, especially, to do this. But you know what? You make the run, you go with the wave, and you get in and you do what you need to do, and it feels good to win. But I think once he's in, it's just awful. It's horrendous how bad this is. And seeing Barack Obama, who has really stayed out of the limelight, he stayed in the background, even though he's still living in Washington, D.C., not very far from the White House. I think next door to the Bidens and maybe even next door to the Kushner Trumps. He stayed out of it. And man, can you imagine if he didn't stay out of it, how much he could be a spur in the side of Donald Trump? But Barack Obama is measured. He's intellectual. He understands that while it might be a good thing that he wants to give the space to Donald Trump, who still doesn't give the space back to Obama. He still says bad things about the president. He still uses the president as a pawn in his media sensationalist game. And the guy stayed out. But now he comes back, maybe for his friend David Letterman. Great way for Letterman to kick off this new endeavor he's doing with Netflix. And it was just nice to sit with the president for an hour again, to sit with grace, to sit with just measured is the word I keep using, to sit with somebody who sits with things themselves, who thinks on things, who ponders, who contemplates, and who is just conversational and is somebody, I know this is the joke, you want to have a beer with. Donald Trump doesn't even drink. I don't want to have a beer with him. Donald Trump would be like the boss that you want to stay as far away from you as you can. You see him turn in the corner and you slide out. Barack Obama is the guy you slap high five. You probably have some kind of crazy handshake with, and he's fun. And when he talks to you, you understand he cares about the things in your life, and he probably knows your name, and he knows, I just can't take this. But it was nice to watch that. And so I'm trying to look into things like that to give me something to do on the treadmill. And I got to find openings to get my reading done too, still during the day. I don't know how it's going to work, but we'll kind of see how we go with that. I've been going through my movies lately for the Oscars, for the podcast next month. It's already coming on us. I have made, it turned out that all my movie watching through the years since last Oscars has been really worthwhile. I saw Get Out, which is in a lot of Oscar conversations. Oscar nominations, I believe, will be released sometime around January 20th, maybe, so later in the month, so we'll really see. But a lot of the buzz is that Get Out is a movie that will be in the discussion in some way. I happened to see that in March. That was a great movie. That was a movie that flips you on your side. I saw Dunkirk on a rainy summer day on my Wildwood vacation. That ended up being worthwhile. That'll be a movie that I was not that interested in seeing because I don't love war movies. But the crux of this story, the narrative of this story was retreat. And it was looking out for your countrymen and making sure everybody gets home. And that's always an important thing. So the fact that it wasn't an aggressive war, but a passive retreat where people could have been like fish in a barrel, and that they got all those people home that they did from a cornered place in France was absolutely amazing. A great movie, really great movie. I got a bunch of movies still to see. I saw Lady Bird in Montclair just before Christmas. Lady Bird's a good movie, especially if you were somebody who graduated high school in the late 90s, early 2000s. I graduated in 2000. I was going to be the big 2000 class. Watch out for the future. This was a girl graduating high school in, I think, 2003. So it was her senior year. But a lot of this, a lot of the touch points of your high school time, Dave Matthews Band in the background, going into relationships with people, it really kind of hit home. And it was a great movie on top of it. It's going to win some things with the Oscars. I think it won some stuff with Golden Globes. Saoirse Ronan was the star of it. She was also the star in the movie Brooklyn. She is going to be one of these actresses, I think, through the years who we see a lot of. She's really good. And when you look at what she did in Brooklyn and then in Lady Bird, two totally different things. It's almost like when for one album you're a classic rock band, and then the next album you're a punk band, and then the next album you're an electronic band, but you're amazing at every one of those kinds of music because you yourself are the source of the greatness. She is such a tremendous actress, and she's only 22 or 23. That's why she was able to play this part as a high schooler. Laurie Metcalf was fantastic. She'll be a supporting actress, front runner, I believe. She played the mother. Really good movie. Tracy Letts plays the father. He's a big Broadway guy, and he was also in Homeland. You'll recognize him, I think, as the CIA director. I think that's what he was. And just, it was really good. The sister of Jonah Hill is in it. She's really good. Very recommended movie. I would definitely see it, both just because it's a good movie and for Oscars. I saw The Big Sick, which is, there's a lot of discussions about that. Who knows where it comes out, but it was on Amazon already. It's an Amazon movie, so it was on Prime. So we watched it, my wife and I. Nice movie, sort of the Camille Nanjiani vehicle. He's the one who plays the Pakistani or Indian developer on Silicon Valley. Very funny guy. And Judd Apatow has kind of gotten into this thing where he builds vehicles around certain actors on the rise. He did it with Amy Schumer. I forgot the name of that movie. But he kind of hears their life stories and builds a movie in his tone and his writing. They all feel very similar in that respect, but builds a comedic movie with heart around, tangentially around the story of that actual person's life. So in this one, it was a Pakistani immigrant with the intense Pakistani family. He's trying to do arranged marriages. He meets a woman in his normal life. He's an Uber driver. And an aspiring comedian living in Chicago. He meets a woman who's at one of his shows, kind of has an love affair with her, and breaks it off because he's not going to be able to move forward with her because he has to stay true to his family and the arranged marriage stuff, even though he's an American at this point, living in America. And then she gets sick and she goes to the hospital for some kind of disease where she could actually almost die. And so he steps into the breach to be at the hospital with her, makes some decisions in the moment, even though they had broken it off. And so she's not even aware of all this stuff he's doing. Her parents then come in, and Ray Romano plays the father. Holly Hunter plays the mother. Just a nice movie, not a spectacular one. Definitely worth a watch. And if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you get right on there. It's in Amazon anyway. The other thing is I needed to find my pirate site for this year. I cannot get through 15 to 20 movies in a month and a half or 2 months with all of the obligations I have, being a father, being a husband, having a job, all this stuff. It's just impossible to see more than 2 movies and really 1 movie a weekend. And often you get by and you can't even see one. So I really need to rely on pirate sites. And I'd rather not have to do that. I wish the movies were out. I would have no problem renting them digitally. But obviously with movie theaters needing to maintain relevancy, they have windows where they have the movies for a certain period of time. We're trying to keep movie theaters in business, and you don't want to move them to digital services because people will then get them there, and then movie theaters will be more empty than they are. So I understand it, but it screws me. I'm willing to pay, but because I don't have the opportunity to, and I can't get to the theater as much as I need to, I have to find a pirate site. And what happens is you find one, and then that pirate site gets found, and then by the next Oscar season, it's gone, and you have to find a new one. And this year, it had gotten very tough to find a site, because what happens is it feels like the selection of sites gets worse and worse each year, or gets smaller and smaller. So many sites appear to be a pirate site that's open to watch, but then end up being a thing where it's like, oh, you got to sign up to be able to get to it. I'm never going to sign up with a pirate site. Who knows what the hell happens? Who knows what they do with your info? Even if they say it's free, you don't trust it. And so it was impossible. This year I was spending days trying to find one. And really the way you find it is you go on Google and you take one of the movies and then you say streaming or free or watch online. And then you go through a million websites that all seem to reroute back to the same place and the same login. Then I got lucky. I found one it was called GoMovies.sc. I don't know what the SC stands for. It's certainly not South Carolina. It's probably some, Baltic country or something like that. But I found it, and it can be bulky. Like if you double click twice on search or something, it'll open up one of the sites where you have to register. But as long as you're on an Apple device, you're pretty safe. As long as you don't sign up for something or click something funny. Even if you click something funny, you're usually pretty safe as long as you don't put info in. It's not like a PC. It's such a protected environment that you really can kind of go out on a limb trying websites out. And so I found this one, and I've been pretty good with it. I saw 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, which is Frances McDormand as a mother whose daughter is raped and killed, and she doesn't feel like the local police force is doing enough to find the killers. And so she sees these vacant billboards outside of town, and she pays to call out the police, and especially the police chief, who's played by Woody Harrelson, to call them out on these billboards and sort of really go hard at them. And it turns out Woody Harrelson actually has cancer and he's dying. And it's one of these black comedies, almost like almost like a Coen Brothers type of movie. And Frances McDormand's always great. That kid Lucas Hedges, who was in Manchester by the Sea, he's also in Lady Bird. This kid's like in everything, and he's a tremendous actor for a young guy. He's a really good actor. He shows up in this movie as her son, and obviously the brother of the slain daughter. It's a weird one. You know, these black comedy movies are always, that's why they are black comedy, because they're dark and they're funny, which is kind of like a weird mix. When you're watching them, you don't really know how to feel, but it was a decent movie. There will be a lot of buzz, I think, for Frances McDormand in her role there. And I'm also in the middle of the movie The Shape of Water, which is just a weird one. It's a Guillermo del Toro movie, 1960s. It's like it revolves around almost like one of these government facilities where weird Cold War era stuff is happening, almost like the 80s analog to Stranger Things, where all the weird stuff is happening in Hawkins, is it Iowa or Indiana? But how I forget the name of the government organization that has the access to the upside down, but it's sort of like that, these Cold War era, but in Shape of Water, it's 1960s Cold War era. And this really bizarre water creature is brought in by Michael Shannon, who always seems best cast in this kind of role, where he's sort of the really weird, almost religious, ascetic personality. He almost plays in some ways the same role he played on Boardwalk Empire. It's like that very buttoned up guy who's got weird stuff coming out of, who kind of has like a dark side coming out of him at all times. And he's hidden behind the proper, aspects of his dress and his position and his personality. So he's good in it. But, this creature comes in, and, there's this, woman who is deaf. So I'm only halfway through the movie, so I'm not sure where we're going to end up, but it's this deaf woman, and she's sort of a cleaning lady at this facility, this government facility. And, she kind of builds a relationship with this water creature. So I think it's sort of a weird love affair. It's a strange movie. I haven't really gotten hooked in it. I'm just trying to watch it to get through it. And I got a lot more movies to watch. I got to see The Post, which I'm annoyed because The Post is actually playing at the little movie theater in my town here, but it's probably going to be gone before I get the chance to see it. I love when I can go see a movie at my little theater here. I feel like it's my own home theater in a way. Phantom Thread, got to see the Daniel Day-Lewis, apparently his last movie ever as an actor. Mudbound is getting a lot of buzz, and you can actually see that. That's a Netflix movie, so you can see it on Netflix. Darkest Hour, of course, Gary Oldman playing Winston Churchill. The Florida Project, Call Me By Your Name, I, Tonya, and down the line, there's a bunch to see. Some I kind of ordered them by what I believe will really be nominated movies, and then you'll wait to see when the nominations come out if the rest of your list is still in play, or whether you can kind of relegate it to after Oscar season. So, and you also try to look around. Before I got the pirate site, my new one, you kind of look around on the different services. Like the two that you can see on Netflix right now are the Mudbound, the original movie for Netflix, and then Icarus, which is in the documentary. It's sort of got some documentary buzz, and that's a Netflix documentary, Netflix original, so you can kind of see that. But I'm doing pretty well, I think. I'm in good shape. I just got to really do some binging on the movies, and I'll be in good position. Love Oscar season, love great movies. Not a fan of mediocre movies. I just don't like wasting life. I don't like wasting time in life. I don't need something to distract me for 2 hours if it's a bad movie. I need every moment of my day to be devoted to pursuits of betterment. Now that can be that can be a daunting thing to try to attack life with, but it's important to me. I don't like the idea of going to a theater and having my time wasted just to see some movie. So that's what I love with Oscar season. You're seeing the best of the best, and you're going to be able to see 15 or 20 movies, documentaries that are thought to be the greatest of that year. And it's a fun pursuit to go through. And then the rest of the year, you kind of take off from a lot of movies and you get back to your TV shows or your reading or all that stuff. Last point, the NBA. The NBA, for me, has felt like it's been in the background of things this year. There's something, I haven't engaged with it the way I thought I would. I was engaged early on with a lot of the storylines happening early in the season. But now that the season has gotten to cruising altitude, I watch it. I keep up with things going on, but I'm not watching full games or every moment of games or following tertiary storylines or what this player's doing or what that player's doing. I mean, when you think about how long the NBA playoffs are, when it's like 2 months at that point, you can lock in then and still have 2 months of watching great basketball. So I've almost got to the point where this regular season feels like preseason, like an extended long preseason. I don't know if it's Trump or with what's transpired the last few months in my life personally. I'm just not engaged. I'm not engaged. Now, I could get somebody on and I could talk about the NBA. I feel up to date enough to have a cogent conversation about it, to know the storylines, to know who's doing really well, who's doing badly, what coaches are in trouble, what teams are maybe playing above what we thought or much below what we thought, or started hot or started badly but have ended up well. I'm thinking of the Bulls being a team that's really picked it up of late. I'm thinking of the Magic, who just kind of fell off the face of the earth, fell off the cliff on the season, which was a sad thing because you thought they were going to maybe be in a position to be 500 or very competitive. And I could even be wrong on that. I think they're I think that they're in, why are these little updates turning on here? Remind me tomorrow. I could be wrong, but I think they really have fallen off. So let's see, NBA standings. Let's go all the way here. Yeah, they're 14th out of 15. They're 12-31. Oh my God. They started 6-2. Like, you look at that, and when you saw them 6-2, you saw Aaron Gordon doing what he was doing, and that since then they've gone 6-29. That is horrendous. They've lost 7 straight, 1-9 in their last 10. I mean, horrendous. Frank Vogel might be in trouble. That's a team who just has not launched in any way. You look at a lot of the middling teams. Should the Bucks be better? Are the Pistons regressing to where we think they should be? Have the Heat ascended yet again with a kind of roster of okay players being coached by Spoelstra? They're 24-17. They're playing right now. The Cavs have come back to earth quite a bit after having an amazing run after starting a little quietly. The Raptors are doing great stuff. They're just a team who continues to over-deliver in the regular season and seems to get incrementally better every single year. They are sort of the team manifestation of what DeMar DeRozan is. That player, he is a perfect player to draft. He comes out as almost a doe, as almost a yearling who has amazing potential. I think played just 1 year of college basketball. Amazing potential as a 19-year-old, and just lives and plays in one place and is developed there and just gets better and better and better each year to the point where he's in the conversation as a potential top 10 player. I mean, he is turned into a tremendous player, and he's even starting to shoot threes now a little bit. And if he gets to even be a decent high 30% 3-point shooter who maybe hits 2 to 2.5 a game, I mean, it opens everything up in his game. I mean, obviously, as your athleticism lessons over the years, you got to get a 3-pointer. So maybe he'll have to do that too. But he has just had a great career trajectory. And you feel good for players like that. The Celtics are obviously 34-10. I mean, there's good stories. There really are. But I think because of how great Golden State is, the point where they can lose one of their great players, 2 of their great players, and still be a regular season juggernaut, it just makes you feel like the season doesn't matter. I mean, they're just so good. They're so much better than everyone. They're playing basketball at a plane that nobody else can even touch, that it just makes you wonder, is the regular season all worth it? And I was thinking, literally, if they were not in the picture, I believe 5 to 6 teams could legitimately win an NBA championship if they weren't in the picture. And does that make the regular season and the league better? If we were to say, look, Golden State, you guys are the best. We're just going to have you sit it out this year because we want to have a competitive game. And they're so good that it's unfair that those 5 to 6 other teams have to be considered pretenders, because you can't contend with Golden State. What they created, what they put together, how they're coached, how they're developed, every part of that team is perfect. It's basketball. It's heaven basketball. The ball movement, the shooting, the spacing, the unique nature of the players put together. It's just, we all say, oh, if you turn an ankle, watch out. I don't want people turning an ankle. And by the way, Steph Curry turned an ankle. He was out. They just keep winning. And then he comes back and he's rested and he's better than ever. He gets a breath of fresh air by not having to play for quite some time. I mean, it's going to be tough, and it just makes this, is it ruining the NBA? I mean, is it really ruining it? It might be. I mean, Cleveland, they're in bad shape because they just have no shot at beating the Warriors. I mean, they had Kyrie Irving, and that was their only shot. When you have him and LeBron putting up 40 apiece and then find 40 from the rest of the team and then defend and try to win the game at that level, you can win if it's below 120, and they won their championship when they got it into the low 90s. That's how you beat them. But how often can you do that? And then when they added Durant, it's like impossible. And Cleveland is a tremendous team. The Celtics are a tremendous team. Houston, San Antonio, even Minnesota now. And, I bring Toronto in. These are tremendous basketball teams with a ton of upside, a lot of potential. They play the game the right way, but they have no shot. There's no shot at beating Golden State. And I don't know if that's good. And I love watching Golden State play. Absolutely love it. But I mean, we're at the point where when they lose a game, you're sitting there going, oh, is this a bad sign? I mean, Golden State is not going to lose 5 straight games. They're not going to lose maybe 3 straight games. They're so good. They're not going on an extended losing streak. And that to me is scary. They're that good. And think about all those teams in play if they weren't there, who now have to feel like pretenders, who now have to feel like everything they do doesn't matter. Golden State has become like climate change. They've become, climate warming, global warming. They become this winter is coming in the Game of Thrones parlance. They've become this thing that is always over your head that you're never going to beat. And I don't know if that's great for the NBA. As great as it is for ratings, as great as it is for memes and social media, I don't know. I mean, I really need to figure this out internally, but is it wrecking my ability to watch the NBA, or is life happening and maybe I'm growing out of some aspects of the intense NBA fandom? I don't know. But then it even got me thinking as my last point here. I'm looking at the Cavaliers, right? If they could have the best year or years of every player on their roster, so when it was peak player on everyone on their current roster, could they even beat the Warriors team then? I still don't know. Here's why. So we look at LeBron James, right? LeBron James is arguably playing the best ball of his career right now. But let's say we take his age 28 season, 2012, 2013, the last championship Miami had in the era there, because obviously the next year they lost to the Spurs. LeBron was 26.8 points per game. He was nearly 2 steals, 7.3 assists, 8 rebounds a game. He was 60% on 2-point shots, 57% overall, 41% on 3-point shots, because his 3-point shot comes and goes. Now, it comes when big moments happen, usually. It feels that way. But his consistency on the 3-ball was pretty fantastic then. I mean, it was really good. He was a highly efficient offensive player. And he was younger. He was in the heart of his prime. Even though I think over the last couple of years, he's gotten even better as a defender and almost as a shot blocking defender. We all think of the chase down blocks and just his physical dominance over the game. Feels like it's gotten a little better over the last years than it might have been even in his 20s. But let's say 28 was his best year. So that's that. I think LeBron can match up with the Warriors. We saw him beat them. Obviously, they lost Draymond Green in that Game 5. They lost Andrew Bogut shortly afterwards. And this cascading of events happened that brought Cleveland its championship in a 7-game series with 2 out of the final 3 games in Golden State. I mean, a tremendous thing. We saw Kyrie have the ability to go head-to-head with them. He's gone now, though. But you look at this roster, and I'm thinking, Derrick Rose is still here, if you remember. If we had 2010, 2011, 22-year-old Derrick Rose, who played 81 games, 25 points per game, nearly 8 assists, 4 rebounds, but he was nearly 45% field goal percentage, 33% from 3, 48% 2-point percentage. I don't think peak Derrick Rose helps you a ton against the Warriors. Maybe his physically domineering play going to the hoop is helpful in that it can knock the Warriors back on their feet. But I think if you can't shoot threes, you just don't have a shot against the Warriors. You need to shoot threes. So I don't think Derrick Rose is amazingly helpful there. Very similar in my mind with Dwayne Wade. If I look at the 2008-2009 season, 27-year-old Dwayne Wade, who played 79 games, nearly 39 minutes per game, who shot 49% from overall, but 32% three-point. It's not good enough. His 52% two-point percentage, good. He always got to the line a ridiculous amount. He got to the line nearly 10 times. That's good. It can slow the game down. But again, I think he didn't shoot threes at the level you need somebody in that role to shoot threes. So you have him and Derrick Rose, even at their peak, I don't think are amazingly helpful against this Warrior team. He had nearly 8 assists, 5 rebounds. Tremendous year. Tremendous. I don't know, though, if you can't shoot threes, if you could do it. Korver's the key. Korver was on a 60-win Atlanta Hawks team in 2014-15. He was 33. He ascended up to a point where he was a tremendous asset on a 60-win team. He was the dagger. He was the shooter. He was the guy they set plays for and picks for and coming around picks. He had 12 points a game. He had only 3 assists. He had 4 rebounds, decent. He's obviously a 90% free throw shooter there. The crazy thing, 49% from 3. He was hitting basically 3 3-pointers a game out of 6. Peak Korver is a tremendous asset against the Warriors. The spacing he creates, if he can hang with them on defense, he was in tremendous shape at this point. This is when he was doing all that weird underwater workouts, and he was just in a tremendous place. He fell off massively in the playoffs. They almost lost to the floundering Brooklyn Nets, who I think had 37 wins that year. It was the last gasp we saw of Deron Williams, but they almost lost to them. It was not pretty. But if you have that Pete Korver on a team with all these other players, led by LeBron, who's going to drive and kick to him, he's a perfect player in that setup. That's why I think they tried to get him last year, but unfortunately he got a little too old. And he still is performing pretty well, but he's just too old. Isaiah Thomas, bring in last year's Isaiah Thomas, 29 points per game, 6 assists, 38% from 3. That's a good player. You bring in that Isaiah Thomas, last year's one, into this team. It's funny, it's only last year's Isaiah Thomas would be the best version of him, but that's a tremendous asset. Kevin Love, I'm going to say 2013-14 at age 25 was the season I would take, even though he had better rebounding numbers several seasons before, but he had 26 points per game, 12.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and he hit 38% from 3. Now he's hitting nearly 41% from 3 this year. He has turned himself into a pretty reliable 3-point shooter for the majority of the game. Maybe not at the close of the game, but to get you rolling in the game, he's a really good 3-point shooter. So I debated whether you want to go with more current Kevin Love because his 3 has really come along, but wasn't 13-14 actually the first year where he really showed the 3? I think it was. But you look at that. That's good. He obviously checked Steph on that Game 7 play, so you know he has the ability to kind of play with him, even though the defense is a worry and the athleticism and the speed is a worry. But I'm looking at that and I'm saying, if you look across the board at all those players having their best year, do they still not have enough to beat this Warriors team? I believe so. I believe they have trouble getting 2 wins. That's how good this Warriors team is. That if you put a peak group of players, when you put a Derrick Rose, an MVP Derrick Rose on this team, you put a peak Dwayne Wade on this team, you have your peak LeBron, but you put peak, I don't know. Kyrie was better for them, but that's how good this Warriors team is. That you amass all of these Cavaliers and having their best years, and it doesn't matter. That's scary. All right, guys, that was a big backlog of stuff. We will pick it up later. Talk to you soon.